Hey guys, today I want to share with you what is on my minimalist iPhone, and as you guys can kind of tell, I have a pretty minimal number of apps on my phone, which I find really helps me to use the time spent on my phone a lot more intentionally, and it allows me to use my phone for things that are actually functional and that add value to my life. So I'm excited to walk through with you guys what exactly are the apps that I keep on my phone and how I organize them. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so starting off with my lock screen and my home screen, I usually use pictures that I've personally taken that are representative of the season, and I usually like using pictures of nature that are calming, inspiring, and relaxing because that's kind of the mood that I want to set when I'm using my phone. So these are both pictures that I took in Hawaii, and they're not only great memories, but I also think that they really contribute to just kind of having a more intentional space on your phone. Another thing that you'll often notice specifically about the picture that I keep in my home screen is that it usually only takes up about the bottom half to bottom third of the screen. And the reason for that is I like being able to keep my apps on two separate pages at the top half of the screen. I feel like it's a little bit less visually cluttering and distracting, and it also helps me just to focus, especially on the first page, on only the apps that I use most frequently, which I find once again just adds to a little bit more of the intentionality of the use of my phone. So that's kind of enough about the pictures. The way that I organize my apps, as I kind of mentioned before, really is using a two-page approach and just keeping them all on the top half. Once again, that just simplifies things a bit. And then another thing that I do to organize the apps on my phone is actually to group them. For example, if you look at the top left-hand corner of this screen, you'll notice the MyFitnessPal and Health app are paired. And I like using the Health app because I like being able to track the number of steps that I take in a day, just because especially on days where I'm not going to the gym, I still want to maintain a certain level of exercise, and that really helps me to keep track of that. Now on top of that, I'll use something like the MyFitnessPal app to be able to track how much water I'm intaking per day. And that's a really just easy way for me to make sure that I'm not getting dehydrated. Likewise, if we look just below that, we have the camera and photos app paired together. Once again, I often use these in tandem, and so it's really nice to be able to easily look at the pictures that I've taken for the day. So moving down one more pair after that, so we have MyFitnessPal, Health app, camera, photos. I have the Gmail app, which I've started using a lot more frequently as I have more than one email inbox to manage because of the work that I do with YouTube. I have another job, and then I have a personal email address as well. And so because of that, it's nice being able to use the Gmail app because it allows me to keep track of multiple email inboxes in one place. I've considered deleting my regular mail app altogether and just replacing this with the Gmail app. Haven't done that quite yet because I do kind of still like being able to use my mail app for accessing my personal mail, but definitely something I'm considering as I look to, just keep an intentional number of apps. Now, I also use a Notes app, and I used to use Evernote and a Notes app kind of in tandem with each other, but I recently consolidated down to just using the Notes app on my phone, and I use this for absolutely everything. As you guys can see, I definitely have a lot of different categories for notes, and rather than writing things down on sticky notes or things like that, my Notes app really is my go-to place for just jotting down thoughts, goals, desires, things to do, and everything in between. So you can see stuff like my weekly assignments for grad school that I'm in, or Christopher and I plan events for our apartment, and so I'll have a budget and a shopping list for things I need to buy for that. Along the same lines, I'll plan YouTube videos on here and a wide variety of other things. So this is just an absolutely invaluable app for me and just really contains basically my entire life. So moving on to the right side, I once again have a pairing of messages and Instagram, and this is kind of the way that I communicate most with my friends. So messages, obviously just texting people in my regular life. That's really important to me to have the ability to do that. But on top of that, Instagram as well. I really like being able to kind of express my personality on there and interact with friends. And one of the things I love most about Instagram is that it's not only a fantastic way to be able to connect with people and really take pictures and share the things I love, which that is amazing for, but it's also been a really great way for me being able to connect with local entrepreneurs and creatives, and that's something that's been really invaluable to me, is just being able to meet people online and then connect with them in real life, and Instagram really has been a platform for letting that happen for me, so I've really enjoyed that. And yeah, if you guys enjoy beautiful pictures and some minimal inspiration, you can definitely check out my Instagram. But yeah, so I love Messages and Instagram because once again, that connection is really important to me. Both of those apps really let me to do that. Now moving down, we can see that I have the clock and calendar apps grouped together. And the clock app, once again, is just something that I use on a routine basis for being able to set my alarm to get up in the morning. I also use the timer frequently for things like baking, so it gets used all the time, and also for communicating with people in other time zones. My sister's in Athens right now, so that's definitely coming in handy. And then the calendar app, I don't use all the time because I prefer having things written down on a physical planner. It just helps me to keep track of things better. But for significant events or things that I, while I'm out and not physically close to my planner, I can jot these things down and then transfer them to my planner later. It's like I've got my best friend's birthday in there and things like that. And then the final grouping on this first page is the weather app and the reminders app. Honestly, there isn't a ton of logic for this one, except that I use both of these apps frequently. So the weather, let's see, in Charlotte is 32 degrees Celsius right now, not Fahrenheit. It is a very warm day and it's supposed to rain later. That's lovely. But yeah, so I use the weather app. That's pretty much the only way I check the weather, so obviously that's helpful. And then the reminders app I'll use for things like reminders, but probably the thing I use it most for is our grocery list. And Christopher and I share a list and we'll just have a running list of things that I need to buy whenever I go grocery shopping. And that's really helpful. We'll also use it for things like movies that we want to watch together. We'll write those down so that we can, if we're ever looking for something to watch, kind of come back to those. Books that I want to read. I haven't been as good as keeping on top of that one lately, but definitely something that's come in handy before. So that's kind of how I use the reminders app, and that's the first page of my phone, which really represents the apps that I use most often. So we have those top 12, and then on top of that, I guess you have the bottom bar as well of apps, and on that we just have the mail app, which I talked about already, the phone app, which obviously gets used quite frequently, even though I probably do text more than I use the phone. I think at this point it's such muscle memory for me that if I was to remove that app from the bottom bar, I just wouldn't know what to do with my life. Safari app definitely gets used frequently for looking up all kinds of different things, from cognitive capacity to cornstarch alternatives to ethical and sustainable summer sandals. So definitely something that, the internet is something that we all use, and it's just a useful app to have on hand. And then finally, the iTunes app, or Apple Music app, I'm not sure what it's called. I don't listen to a lot of music through this app. I tend to use Spotify instead. But what I do use this for is, let me find it, J.K. Rowling. I have all of the Harry Potter audiobooks on here, and I am a big Harry Potter fan if you know me well, and so I do frequently, probably at least once a year, listen to the Harry Potter audiobooks from start to finish. And so, that one just kind of stays on my phone because it's an experience I really enjoy and happens on an annual basis. Okay, moving on to the final page. This is definitely where I keep kind of the bulk of the apps that might not get used as often, but still play a vital role on how I use my phone. So first off, we have my virtual wallet. I bank with PNC, and just having a virtual wallet on there allows me to quickly transfer funds if necessary, check how my balance is doing, pay my credit card bill, anything like that. It's just a useful app to have, and probably gets used a few times a month, which is enough for me personally to justify keeping it on my phone. Also the calculator, I use this definitely on a daily basis because math was never my strong suit, and if I'm ever trying to perform any kind of equation, it's basically my go-to rather than my brain because I hate mental math. Okay, next up I have the Apple Maps app, and Apple Maps is definitely my preferred map app, if you will. I know that a lot of people love Waze and Google Maps, but what I love about Apple Maps is not only that it has a really streamlined interface, more so than some of the other apps out there, but it also really allows you to very easily find things like coffee shops, food, places to eat in your area, and it gives you a ton of fantastic options in a simple to see and find way that really is just unparalleled in my opinion on the other apps. So Apple Maps is definitely my favorite way to go, and I'm a huge fan of being able to explore the new locations in my area, whether that's a coffee shop or a restaurant. And so Apple Maps, I feel like, just really facilitates that well. It helps you to find new places, discover new favorites, and it also interfaces really well with the Yelp app, which I kind of use the two of them in tandem a lot. Okay, moving on, those are the three kind of other frequently used apps that if I wanted to add to this one, I probably could, but for the sake of having similar rows on each side, I just keep them over here. It's all good. I also have a folder for utilities, and these are apps that either I cannot delete or they're just useful apps that I use somewhat infrequently, but I still want to keep on my phone. An example of that is FaceTime. I might use it a couple of times a month, but it's definitely still a useful thing to have. Likewise, the settings app isn't necessarily my favorite, but it is super useful. One thing I've been trying to focus on more frequently is using the screen time feature on my phone a lot more, which monitors how you're using your time spent on your phone each day. It also allows you to set downtime and time limits for time spent on an app. So for example, I've got my downtime set from 11 p.m. to 8 a.m., which means that I'm not able to access a lot of the social media apps and things like that during that time. That way I'm able to focus on sleeping, which is what I should be doing during those times. Likewise, I also have limits set for the different apps on my phone. So on Instagram, I have a 30-minute time limit set every day, which is really helpful just to make sure I'm not abusing the time I spend on Instagram. I love it as an app, but sometimes I can love it a bit too much, so that's definitely helpful. Same thing with YouTube. The limit is a bit higher just because YouTube is a part of how I make my living, but definitely I still don't want to be spending too much like frivolous time just like on a binge watching cycle, so that's helpful. So I use the screen time feature a lot. And then I'll also use things like do not disturb, hotspots, and things like that occasionally. So the setting app comes in handy. Same thing with the wallet. Find My iPhone, I don't think you can even delete. Same thing with the App Store. So those are all things that I, probably don't use very frequently, but either I can't delete or I use them often enough to warrant keeping them. Voice memos and FaceTime, I think, are the two that kind of fall under that category. Okay, moving on, I have 4 other folders of apps. This is kind of a miscellaneous app that keeps my Amazon app, Yelp app, and ESPN. Amazon just because it's useful if I need to order something and don't want to log on to a physical computer to do that. Yelp, like I mentioned before, I'll use that for helping us find places to eat quite frequently, and it's really helpful, especially if you're in a new city or even the one you live in and are looking to try a new place. I like being able to look up reviews and figure out what's good to eat there. The ESPN app, I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm a huge football fan, so I kind of use that to stay up to date with what's happening in my sport. And yeah, it just gives you fun sports updates. Definitely not for everyone, but it's something that I use personally all the time. Okay, so this is one of the more frequently used folders in my phone, and that's because one of my favorite uses for phones is just being able to, I guess, consume media. So whether that's reading my Bible, listening to podcasts, I've been listening to the Potterless podcast recently. My sister recommended it to me, and it is hilarious. Also, we've got Audible. I listened to the Lord of the Rings series on there last year and really enjoyed that. And also we have an Audible subscription, and I love just being able to listen to an audiobook when I'm on the run. Podcasts and audiobooks are one of my favorite ways just to be able to engage my mind while I'm doing fairly mundane tasks, whether that's driving, preparing dinner, going for a walk, things like that. I'll also use Spotify pretty frequently. I have a variety of different types of music I listen to, if you will. So for example, earlier today I did a 10-minute meditation and just had some beautiful nature sounds on in the background as I was meditating. But I also have a lot of artists that I love listening to, like Ed Sheeran, Fleet Foxes, Bon Iver, things like that. And then I'll also listen to kind of just background noise when I'm studying as well. So I use the Spotify app for a lot of different uses. And then finally we have the beautiful Kindle app, which fortunately I have been reading more fun books on lately, but unfortunately it's also what I use to read my textbooks on quite frequently. I enjoy getting e-textbooks a lot more than physical textbooks, and so I'll frequently just use the Kindle app to read my textbooks, which is what it was on currently. But I mean, sometimes I get to use it to read fun things too, so it's all good. Second to last folder, this social folder, is something that I don't really have a ton of control over because my job is in social media. And so things like YouTube and YouTube Studio are things that I use personally for my YouTube channel frequently. And obviously I think we can all understand why I need those. But things like Facebook, Facebook Messenger, GroupMe, Twitter, and WhatsApp are all different platforms that I use for my job. I personally am not the biggest fan of Facebook or Facebook Messenger, but because I use them all the time for my job, I can't really delete them. Same thing goes for WhatsApp. There's no way I'd have that if it weren't for my job, but you know, that's just kind of the way it is. Pinterest is one of the apps on here that is really just a fun app for me. I love being able to find inspiration and recipes on here. I have a lot of different apps like style, food, DIY things that I want to do. I made this amazing blueberry crisp the other night. And so there's just a lot of fun ways that I can use Pinterest, but apart from that, this social folder is typically things that I just use for a work level. Besides YouTube, I do enjoy YouTube. So yeah, it's kind of where we're at with this folder. Wish it could be smaller, wish I could change that, but you know, it's my job, so I can't. And sometimes you just have to be okay with that. Anyways, moving on. Finally, we have the photo and video folder. This is a very simple and small folder containing just Lightroom, which I use for editing all of the pictures that I post on Instagram, as well as things that I post on YouTube. And it's a really amazing photo editing app that really allows you to be able to easily apply presets and do a lot of tweaks to pictures that are fun and that really just kind of make the picture come alive. And as we've been talking about, I definitely enjoy using Instagram, and one thing that I definitely love doing is just having a pretty looking feed. And because of that, I enjoy using Preview just to be able to see what pictures will look like when combined together. It's just a fun little thing for me. I like having a fairly aesthetic feed, and this just helps me to get an idea of what the pictures will look like combined before I post them. So those are the two that I use for Instagram / just picture editing in general. And yeah, the final app I have on here is Harry Potter Wizards Unite, which is a fun little app that basically takes you into the Harry Potter universe and allows you to recapture different like dark arts artifacts and just things from the Harry Potter world. You can brew potions and be a professor if you want. Very nerdy, I know, but it's something that I really enjoy. So, I'm a passenger apparently. But it's something I really enjoy, and you know, I've had it for about a couple of weeks now. The game hasn't been out super long, but it's been really fun and I've been enjoying using it so far. So those are the apps that I keep on my iPhone and how I organize them. If you were to take all of the apps out on my entire iPhone, it would all come out to less than 2 pages worth of apps, which for me is an amount that really allows me to do things that I need to do, like my job, but also keeping an intentional amount of apps that are full of things that I actually use, and just kind of free from all of the fluff that people who have 4 or 5+ pages worth of apps typically have. It allows me to just use my phone practically for what it's meant to be used, as a communication and information device. And personally, it helps me to focus the time spent on my phone more so that I'm not spending 5, 6, 7 hours a day on my iPhone. Obviously, there are people out there with far more minimal iPhones than I have, but I do think that I've really been able to curate an intentional number of apps that really add value to my life and get used, which I think at the end of the day should be all of our goals when it comes to approaching the way that we use our phones intentionally. We should have the apps that we use and that we enjoy using, and get rid of all of the fluff that just kind of accumulates on our phones over time. I hope this was helpful for you though, and that it hopefully gave you some inspiration on how you can simplify your iPhone. And if you have any tips or tricks that I didn't mention on how to use your phone more intentionally, or how to organize the apps on your iPhone, definitely leave those tips and tricks in the comments below. I personally would love to hear about them, and I'm sure lots of other people would as well. That's everything I have for you today though, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more weekly inspiration about minimalism and intentional living. I love you guys all so much though. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.